Israel may have just redrawn the geopolitical map of the Middle East, but the fallout could reshape the world. In a stunning display of military precision, it executed what may be the most audacious operation since Desert Storm. Whether it succeeded in stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions, though, is only a question that time can answer. Israel struck hard. It dismantled Iran's military and leadership infrastructure in hours, and now the plan ahead leads to one inevitable and far more terrifying conclusion. This is how Israel struck Iran's nuclear sites. It's just past midnight in Tehran, and most of the city is asleep, but a group of elite Mossad agents has been awake for hours. They're part of a deep-cover Israeli force, operatives who slipped into Iran over a year ago and have lived ever since under assumed identities. Their primary mission? Prepare for the unthinkable, a military operation to stop Iran from getting its hands on nuclear weapons. Iran's repeated threats against Israel have heightened tensions in the region, prompting almost every major power in the region to rally against its nuclear ambitions. And that's why it's possible that others have quietly played a role in the operation that's about to begin, an operation that will explode into action in the dark hours of a Tehran night. Just don't expect anyone to admit it. The Mossad agents and members of Israel's military intelligence and special forces have been smuggling in drone parts and 3D printers. These have been used to assemble a compact fleet capable of surveillance and precision strikes, and it has been built in a home on the outskirts of Tehran. The operation has striking similarities with Ukraine's stunning attack on Russian bomber fields, further fueling speculation that the two nations secretly collaborated in their respective preparations. After all, when it comes to drone warfare, Ukraine is the world's most skilled player. Timing is crucial. The agents within Tehran must strike in unison with squads of special forces units already deployed within Iran. In all likelihood, they evaded detection via extremely low-altitude helicopter insertion, a similar attack used by Israel to destroy a missile facility in Syria manned by Iranian proxies. However, they may have also been infiltrating into the country over the last few weeks, blending into the local population while concealing a deadly cargo made up of small arms and man-portable guided missiles. These portable systems are typically operated by a two-person crew and possess capabilities comparable to some drones. With a range of over 12 miles and guidance controlled remotely by operators, they can be guided toward high-value targets. This capability will prove key because the Special Forces teams have set up their firing positions well away from their targets, ideally out of sight of any curious onlookers or security forces. The ability to pilot the missiles will also allow them to navigate complex terrain, indicating that at least some of the Special Operations Forces or SOF teams were operating from inside of urban terrain. The Israeli infiltration teams have three objectives. First, they must eliminate Iranian air defense radars and missile batteries, clearing the way for the airborne strike packages. Second, they must strike at the mobile missile launchers used by Iran in an expected ballistic missile retaliation. With around 130 launchers, but nearly 1,000 missiles that could hit Israel, Iran is facing a serious bottleneck problem, and for missile defenses back home to be successful, they have to make that bottleneck as tight as possible. Each launcher destroyed not only slows down the pace of retaliation, but it limits how many missiles can be fired per volley. Iran could use ground facilities to fire missiles, but those have a limited lifespan if the Iranian Air Force can't keep the skies clear of Israeli jets. Iran's Air Force is widely regarded as outdated. Even within the country, there appears to be little expectation that it could go head-to-head with Israel's modern Air Force. The third objective is as crucial, maybe even more so than the first two. Special assassination teams use a variety of missiles and drones to target senior Iranian leadership. The goal is to paralyze the Iranian military by severing its chain of command. This will open up the skies for Israeli aircraft, possibly even including helicopters, infiltrating with even more Special Forces troops. At 0 hour, the attack to dictate the fate of the Middle East begins. All of Israel's operatives are acting in coordination. From the converted safe house on the outskirts of Tehran, quadcopter drones are launched through the rooftop openings and windows. Though the drones are remotely piloted from as far away as Tel Aviv, the on-site security team has a singular purpose: to delay any immediate Iranian response. If neighbors report unusual activity, their role is to hold off local security forces just long enough for the full drone fleet to be deployed. The drones fly several kilometers to a nearby Iranian air defense site, destroying missile launchers parked there. Across the heart and west of Iran, similar attacks are taking place, carving out a corridor from Tehran all the way to Iran's western border with Iraq. Israeli electronic warfare aircraft launch their own attack, along with F-35s firing high-speed anti-radiation missiles. The EW aircraft confuse Iranian air defense networks, introducing false targets and obfuscating real ones. Jamming of radar signals adds chaos to an air defense network that's already at its breaking point. Meanwhile, F-35 firing harms destroy any air defense radar not already taken out by the drones. The speed and scale of the attack raised suspicions, prompting speculation that undisclosed U.S. aircraft or capabilities may have played a role. Regardless, the outcome is a corridor of safe airspace stretching to the very heart of Tehran, where even non-stealthy fourth-generation aircraft can now operate. Simultaneously, hunter-killer teams fire guided missiles and guide them into their targets via remote feeds. The target is Iran's large fleet of mobile missile launchers, critical for any retaliatory strike involving the country's vast ballistic missile arsenal. The guided missiles are agile enough that some of them engage mobile launchers situated inside the densely urban terrain of Tehran itself. The attack is a complete surprise, and dozens of launchers are destroyed. Confused missile crews look for orders, but there are none coming, and that's because the third leg of Israel's opening attack is in full swing. Mossad agents and special forces assassination teams are making their move against senior Iranian leadership. For years, they have built dossiers on every single one of Iran's senior government and military officials, as well as the nuclear scientists responsible for building a working nuke. Mohammad Bagheri, chief of staff of the Iranian armed forces and second only to the Ayatollah himself, is killed in a missile strike. Hossein Salami, commander-in-chief of the infamous Iranian Republican Guard, is killed possibly by a drone. One by one, senior Iranian leaders are killed in their homes, on the street, or in offices. Israeli intelligence allegedly assesses Iran's communication system, laying the groundwork for a calculated strike. Using this access, they organize a meeting of senior military and government leaders, timed just moments before the operation begins. An Israeli F-35 drops a guided munition on the meeting location, and within seconds the building is destroyed, along with much of Iran's senior command structure. The attack is overwhelming and brutally efficient and highly targeted. The goal is to destroy critical infrastructure and stoke up anti-regime forces and push for regime change. In the first 5 minutes of the operation, Israel will have crossed the Rubicon. There is no coming back from this. The scale and effectiveness of the initial strike are already significant enough to alter regional perceptions of power. Any confidence Iran had in its ability to conventionally deter Israel or the United States is shattered. The minds of future Iranian leaders are almost certainly made up. The only way to ensure regime survival now is to have a nuclear deterrent. Conventional military power has failed to deter Israel, and the use of ballistic missiles has also failed. From the outset of the operation, Iranian leadership likely understands that its long-term survival, if the regime endures, may hinge on acquiring a nuclear deterrent. It's the only way that they can guard against the threat they fear the most: American invasion. Israeli leadership also knows this. Statements from Iranian officials over the years, some expressing hostility toward Israel's existence, have only reinforced the belief in Tel Aviv that a nuclear-armed Iran poses an intolerable risk. There is no choice but to continue with the operation. With air defenses destroyed, blinded, or paralyzed into inaction, fourth-generation F-16s and F-15s move in for the attack. Israeli F-16s are specially modified with conformal fuel tanks and drop tanks twice the size of the American ones. This gives them the range to punch deeper into Iran. Operations are throttled only by Israel's limited aerial refueler fleet of 7 to 8 aircraft, further fueling speculation that U.S. tankers are flying assists. A wave of 200 aircraft make up the opening volley of Israel's air offensive. They go after 100 ground targets, including missile launchers, radars, Republican Guard facilities, and airfields. The attacks further paralyze Iran's military. The most important strikes, though, are against Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz and Isfahan. Additional facilities are also targeted in a bid to shut down Iran's nuclear ambitions. But despite its stunning success, Israel has one big problem. There is at least one facility, perhaps the most important of all, that cannot be destroyed, and the only nation with the right weapon for the job is the United States. The Fordow fuel enrichment plant is buried over 260 feet into a mountain and is the best protected site in Iran's nuclear network. It was meant to survive exactly the type of attack Israel is carrying out, and it seems there is little that can be done to shut it down without the US's aid. Israel instead strikes at nearby power plants feeding the facility. The centrifuges buried deep underground that help enrich uranium to weapons-grade levels are extremely sensitive. The sudden disruption of power is believed to have damaged many of them. Over the course of the next 24 hours, Israel's campaign continues. The Israeli Air Force is now operating in the heart of Tehran, a clear indication that Iran's air defense network has been largely neutralized across a broad corridor. This is widened by further special forces and airstrikes, even as Israeli SAF and Mossad focus on two different hunts. Special forces growing in number over the last 12 hours are now focused on locating and disabling mobile missile launchers. Their operations have intensified following a retaliatory barrage of more than 100 missiles launched toward Israel. The delay in the attack shows how effectively Israel has severed Iran's chain of command. Most of the missiles are intercepted or explode harmlessly away from their intended targets or civilian buildings. Over the next 3 days, there will be additional barrages, with Iran incorporating lessons learned from previous attacks to increasingly evade Israel and their allies' dwindling stock of interceptors. Israeli military censors refuse to allow the publication of successful strikes on military targets in order to deny Iran intelligence, but most Iranian missiles that manage to penetrate regional defenses end up striking civilian areas with no military value. This puts massive pressure on the special forces working to destroy mobile launchers. With air supremacy established, Iran can no longer credibly defend itself from air attack. Israeli drones and strike aircraft loiter over Tehran and across the country, searching out mobile launchers. Using small-diameter bombs, they destroy mobile launchers even on busy freeways, destroying the launch vehicle. But the civilian response in Iran isn't what the regime expected. Outside of a core group of hardliners, the public reaction is anything but unified. Within the first 3 days of the conflict, social media posts and messages from the Iranian diaspora paint a clear picture. Many citizens see the attacks not as an act of war against the people, but as a blow against a regime responsible for decades of brutality and repression. The Iranian people do not shed tears for slain military commanders and government officials. Israeli airstrikes zero in on state-run media outlets, shutting down attempts to reshape the public narrative. Meanwhile, in broad daylight in the heart of Tehran, the unthinkable is playing out. Squads of Mossad agents are hunting for Iranian military leaders and gunning them down. Israel has been able to track and target Iran's pre-war leadership. Senior figures are eliminated and their replacements are appointed, but those too are being executed. Iran's new military chief is appointed on day 1 of the fighting and dead by the dawn of day 4. It's been assumed that Israel had spent over a year tracking known Iranian leaders and possibly their replacements, and now the replacements to the replacements are being eliminated. Israeli intelligence appears to be providing near real-time tracking of regime movements and decisions. With all of these targeted assassinations, one question is hanging over the conflict. Why hasn't Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the beating heart of the regime, been eliminated? The answer might be that the United States has urged restraint on Israel's part. The White House may still cling to the hopes of reviving nuclear negotiations, but the window is closing fast. But the reality is Iran is now unlikely to abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons. Tehran might think about diplomacy, signaling through intermediaries that it's open to ceasefire talks. But behind closed doors, the long-term strategy is heading in a different direction. The scale of Israel's strike means it's nearly impossible for Iranian leadership to accept the outcome without retaliation. Rather than retreat, Tehran is likely to double down, pushing its nuclear program even further underground, both literally and strategically. It will keep its development hidden until the moment Iran is ready to reveal its nuclear hand to the world. With Israel likely unable to topple the Iranian regime without American help, a question now hangs over the White House, one that will define the 21st century. Will the U.S. join the war and enact regime change? Or will it gamble that a humiliated Iran might finally abandon its nuclear ambitions? What Israel has proven is that despite years of rhetoric and a military buildup, Iran remains vulnerable. Its survival depends on the mercy of its enemies that it has sworn to destroy. But nuclear weapons could change all of that forever. And if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, nations like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and more have already declared their own intent to develop weapons of mass destruction for themselves. The Middle East is no longer a powder keg waiting to blow, the fuse has been lit. This isn't the only time Iran has faced a sudden military showdown. Watch the time the US and Iran went to war for 24 hours to find out how close we came to World War III, or click this other video instead.